Hey everyone, Ariel Adams here with the Spending Time podcast. I have a special guest, George Mayer. What is your actual position at Gobberg/Watchbox now? Are you the guy in charge yet?
Yeah, I guess my official title is Director of Sales and Watch Buying.
Director of Sales and Watch Buying. Okay, that's a lot. That's a lot of responsibility. The topic today, of which I think you are a seasoned expert, are watches, both new and pre-owned to a degree, that have the power to be sold at over retail. And it's not so much as you as a salesperson are excited about this, but is an interesting phenomenon that certain watches tend to, receive this type of demand. Um, so George is someone that I have a lot of respect for because you're one of the really good watch sales guys. You understand the relationship side of it. I think that I've always known you to be someone who's very honest and have the consumer's best interest in mind. And I say that for a really specific reason because I think that salespeople, especially in the luxury space, sometimes get a bad rap for trying to extract as much out of the consumer as possible. And I think that people like yourself that have sort of a more long tail view of this know that the best success you're going to have is by having the best relationship and honest open relationship with consumers because they're going to keep coming back for watches. Would you modify that statement I said at all?
Um, I appreciate the kind words first and foremost, and I'm excited to be on with you now. It's crazy. I've been in the industry for 10 years now, and I've seen ebbs and flows. I'm fortunate to have seen pre 2008, and then the world almost ended in the back half of 2008 when Lehman Brothers went down, and it was sort of a question whether the watch industry would even make it. And to see where we're at now, where watches are now trading at a crazy premium on the secondary market, it's actually hard to believe, and it's all happened rather quickly over the last 6 months. I mean, it's sort of now like, where does it end? It started, I think, when during the fourth quarter of last year, Rolex was outspoken and told all of their authorized retailers that they were going to hold back product. And I think it's that they're such a big global company and they only want to grow incrementally every
What
year.
what exactly did they say to you? Like, be more specific.
So I think the message was that they were at a record sales number for the year by the end of the third quarter, and they didn't want to beat the previous year's number, 2016's number, by too much because they want to grow every year. So as a result, during the fourth quarter, they barely shipped anything. I mean, we got nothing. I mean, we got very few watches, and as a result, I think what's happened, I think a lot of people believed that they would start shipping a lot more once 2018 started, and they haven't done that at all. I think what they view now, their game plan is they have 3 months of house money in the sense that they didn't ship in the fourth quarter of last year. So they know that they can slowly roll things out and slow play it because they have an extra quarter. Meanwhile, the busiest quarter and being the holiday season, where they're comfortable that they're going to hit their number, and they like that the demand is now insane for their sports models. I mean, every sports model, I would say, more or less, I mean, close to every sports model is now trading on the secondary market at retail or over, which is insane.
Right. So let's. I want to get back to this topic because I have a lot to say on it. But let's go back to this notion of watches selling well, not all watches, but some watches selling for these impressive prices and things like that. Now let's just sort of clarify the situation here. This is not all brands and all watches. We're talking about a select amount of watches and a select amount of brands. Correct?
Correct. I would say Rolex, Patek, AP are the
Okay.
three that I think fall under this category.
Now, again, the topic here is watches that are sort of able to trade at over retail, and you said that you're surprised at how we're in this situation where that exists right now, especially so few years after this economic crash. And I still think that we're in a very economically depressed time globally, but that's another conversation. Did this happen in the past? When you first started and you're in the first part of your 10 years, did you see this type of thing, or is this a new type of behavior?
I remember it clear as day. The 5712 steel retailed for 26.6, and it was trading for 40,000. And the 5980 steel was 44.1, and it was trading for 60,000. So I did see that watches were trading for a premium. That was when the 5960 in platinum with the anthracite dial came out as well. It was 78.8, and that was trading for a little bit.
You need to remember, not everyone has Patek Philippe reference numbers on the tip of their tongue, and they don't necessarily know that what you're saying references Patek Philippe. So just for the audiences there that are not as into it as you.
The Nautilus watches from Patek were trading at a significant premium over their retail prices, and the annual calendar chronograph, which was new then, was also trading at a premium. So I did see it pre-2008 and the financial crisis. Pateks were definitely trading at some of them at a significant premium over their retail prices.
Okay, now I have a theory, and I haven't been able to fully substantiate this theory, but I think that there's a lot of merit to it. I think that one of the things that happened from the financial crisis was there wasn't a lot of things to invest in. Traditional equities and various types of securities and things like that just were not as attractive as investment vehicles. So people around the world that had money to invest, or people whose job it was to invest money for people, were like, what else do we invest in? And then there started to be a lot more focus on collectible art, collectible cars, and collectible watches. So my theory is that a lot of the growth in the collectible watch space is directly linked to the fact that there just isn't that much else out there to invest in, especially that's a safer investment. I would not, you know what I mean?
I agree completely. Now it's sort of, it's a question of where does it top out now? I mean, you have the stock market at an all-time high, and you have people saying that stocks are trading at multiples of earnings that don't really make sense. So it's sort of like where else do you put your money? I mean, do you put it in art? Do you put it in hard objects like watches? I mean, they're a global commodity where every demographic likes watches. Certainly not every person, but every locale, every kind of person, every gender. I mean, everyone likes watches. So it's something that, is attractive to a worldwide basis.
Right. Okay, so that's some of the context that we have here. So there are some watches that were able to sell in the past at above retail. Well, the first stories I ever heard of, and this is kind of before our time, was I guess in the 90s, where in certain parts of the world to get a steel Rolex Daytona was a big challenge. You obviously heard stories about this as well, right?
Of course.
And what were the stories that you were told? Probably you were fresh in the industry, and people would tell you about the good old days where you could sell a Daytona for above retail. What did that make you think and feel?
Well, I couldn't really understand why there was such demand and these watches were so coveted like they were, and how it was sort of like a retailer was doing a favor for you by allowing you to buy a high-end, luxurious, discretionary item. And, it's an interesting concept, now to explain to people that aren't as in the know, that want these prestigious watches, that if we were to sell it to them, a Patek Nautilus or a Rolex Daytona right now, which retails, the current retail price on a Rolex Daytona stainless steel with a ceramic bezel is $12,400. But meanwhile, we, as an authorized Rolex dealer, would pay significantly over the retail price for a pre-owned one. So I know that seems bizarre to people, but the fact of the matter is that the demand so far exceeds the supply that they're trading at a significant premium, and we can't appease the demand. We don't have enough supply to appease the demand, that if we want to get them to our customers that are willing to pay the market value, we will go out and pay above the retail price ourselves for the watches.
So here's a question that goes to consumer psychology. I think you and I agree there's no like deficiency of watches to buy at all kinds of levels. So that means if there's a watch you want and it's not available, yes, you could perceive it to be scarce and thus more valuable and want to buy it for a premium. But you could just as well find some other watch that isn't as scarce and is able to get a discount. Why is it that you think that people, and this might be an overly simplistic answer, I don't know, but why do you think it is that people, given the availability of similar products at arguably better values, want to get something that is perceived as being harder to get for more money when there isn't as necessarily a increased value associated with it? Do you know what I mean?
I think there's definitely a look at me factor. If somebody's wearing a 5711 blue right now, I'm sure, with a blue dial, so that's just the time only Nautilus with the date. If somebody's wearing that watch right now, I'm sure that they get asked multiple times a week, where'd you get that watch and how'd you get it? And I'm sure they love it.
You know, the funny thing is I'm reviewing that watch right now, and I've had that exact experience, which is really funny.
Right, exactly. They're like, how'd you get that? Because it's so coveted, and I think that people buy into it. There are rumors, and Thierry Stern has said publicly that he may not make the watch for forever. So, as a classic Gerald Genta model, arguably his best creation from arguably the best watch manufacturer in the world, if that's no longer made, does it become a work of art? Is it something that just continues to go up over the course of time in value?
Has Patek produced? Well, actually, no, but they produce. Do they ship less now than they used to? Does it feel like look, Patek could make more if they want to, right? Like, I'm not saying they will, but if they wanted to, they could just churn out Nautiluses, right?
Correct.
And they don't. So the question is why? Is it strategic? Is it because they can't make more? I would argue that Patek and Rolex, both because they are independently controlled companies, meaning that they don't have shareholders, they can do something which I call high horological discipline. And this is looking at the market and saying, in order to, I hate to use the word manipulate demand, but to make sure there is never excess inventory, why not discontinue models while they're still in demand? Because we know that the available ones out there will be gobbled up, and there'll be a sort of scarcity psychology, which is what you're talking about, the look at me, where people are like, this is hard to get, oh, I got one. And then they can just sort of make a small modification because they know that people essentially want the same thing, but with small modifications, and sort of rinse and repeat the strategy. And again, the discipline comes in at saying, we could probably sell 50,000 more of these pieces, but we're not going to because of sort of the long term. Do you agree or disagree that those conversations happen?
I think you said it perfectly. I think luxury is scarcity, and these independent, privately held brands understand that, and they're able to not feed into all of the demand. If everyone that wants something can have it, it's no longer scarce, it's no longer prestigious, and then the secondary market value on it will tank. It'll plummet. And I think that the groups are under such pressure to hit a number every quarter that over the years, during my time at least, I've seen that they've fed into the demand too much, and they've allowed too many people to have their watches that frankly are just as nice. I mean, the comparison that I would make, Ariel, is I believe that Lang & Son makes watches that are arguably just as nice as Patek Philippe. Yet their watches on the secondary market, meanwhile, they make a tenth of the amount of watches that Patek Philippe makes. Theirs get crushed on the secondary market. Why is that? When their watches are just as nice and they make a tenth as many as Patek. Why is that the case? I think it's just that the branding that Patek Philippe has done in Rolex, and now even AP, is truly priceless. And I think that collectors understand that they abide by their mottos, such as we're merely taking care of our watches for the next generation. It's sort of like we want our watches to be an investment. And since they've paid such close attention to the secondary market value of their watches, That's why they're selling so well on the primary end now.
And
Because
when you say that they've paid such close attention, what do you actually mean that they're doing?
as soon as a watch gets soft, Paddock will discontinue it. I think they've done it many times, and a lot of times they'll also discontinue a watch while it's still hot, like you said. I think it's bad to let a watch run its course, right? And I think that they monitor the secondary market value and where their watches are trading very much so. I mean, and I think that collectors are comfortable putting their money into those brands, even if they're not looking to sell the watch. More and more now, we're getting customers saying, "Well, what would you buy this watch back for?" That's something that we get now. Like, what's this watch worth? On the secondary market, people care.
Right.
It's important.
How do you respond to those questions?
We're very transparent. I mean, on our Watchbox app, we provide a secondary market value based on eBay results, Chrono24 purchases, any documented sales of a certain SKU. We put it into a formula. It's a different area than it's engineers, not something that's my forte on how they spit out the number, but they take the data and spit out a number on what your watch is worth, sort of like Kelley Blue Book with cars. So we actually are trying to provide transparency to the market and put a value on watches so that people know what their watch is worth.
Now, I think that you and I have both talked a lot about watch as an investment and how it's an emotional investment. You should never buy a watch just like a car because you think it's going to go up in value. Why do you think there's so much focus now on resale value? Because when I think about a watch, I don't think that I'm going to own it for a few years and resell it. What is going on in the world and the market where consumers are now suddenly so much more interested in this?
Well, I think part of it is what you alluded to earlier. I mean, if you're liquid, and a lot of the one percenters and the people who buy watches are feeling pretty good these days. I mean, the stock market's high. Where do you put your money? Where are you spending your money? I mean, the real estate market is killing it in most places. The stock market's at an all-time high. But it is interesting how it's now become a lot more on the radar of people than it has been in years past. It's a good question. It's something that I want to think about. Why is it now more so than ever? I think it's partially due to the fact that there's more information out there, and people like us are making it more transparent. We're showing, what a watch is worth. I think it was just kept in the dark, and people had no idea in the past. And now that it's become more to the forefront, and we're trying to show people the secondary market, because the pre-owned watch market is growing exponentially. As a retailer now, with a lot of the brands trying to sell watches more themselves and going vertical and selling direct to consumers, you get concerned that you're going to get squeezed out. I mean, a lot of retailers just lost their license to carry Audemars Piguet. That was the talk of SIHH. They closed tons of longtime, big, reputable retailers. And
why do you think they did that?
I think that they are able to sell more. So here, it's a good question, and I'm glad you asked this. So AP's growth strategy is with the same amount of inventory. So whereas one might think, oh, they're going to make more watches to satisfy the demand. No. They're just going to take a bigger piece of their 40,000 watches a year production themselves. And by taking a bigger piece themselves, they're going to make more boutique-only watches, which are sold only by themselves out of their own boutiques. They are going to reduce their wholesale margin to their few partners that are remaining. And what it does is discounts are now few and far between. Where AP used to be a brand where you could get significant discounts, good luck trying to find the watch that you want now, let alone get any sort of discount. And what then happens is people see how well they hold their value, how scarce they are. And it makes them want the watches even more because of how difficult they are to get. And the fact that they know that once they buy the watch, it's a safe investment. I mean, they can always, get their money out of it to a certain extent. And in some, like, we've been talking about, in some, you could actually make a profit on the watch.
Okay, so let's talk about the notion of charging more than retail. Now, you said something interesting, and I think that it's important to mention it. As a retailer, when you are selling a Govberg authorized new watch, while you can't sell everyone everything they want because you don't have it, you have a policy where you don't charge more than retail. Of course, you can't, like, again, you have to choose who your customers are going to be if there's more customers than watches. But for a new watch, you don't charge more than retail.
Correct. And where it gets difficult is you'll have people now, even still, as we approach Basel, you'll have people say, oh, I want to be first on your lists for this watch. And we're honest and upfront with people and say, we don't do it in a chronological order. I mean, the fact of the matter is we give them to our best customers that buy other stuff that isn't in as high of demand.
Sure.
So if we get one stainless steel Daytona a quarter, as a big authorized retailer. So if we get, four a year, meanwhile, keep in mind, that's a watch that we would pay, thousands over ourselves. It's a gift. It's sort of like, thank you for your allegiance to us and buying other stuff from us. And because you're so loyal and buy other stuff from us and send people our way and are an ambassador for Govberg, we're going to do you a favor. That's how crazy it is. It just seems so weird. It's almost like I'm uncomfortable saying it. We are going to do you a favor and sell you this watch at retail. That's the way we do it, and it's very difficult.
And you're not alone. I mean, I understand it sounds awkward to say, but I just want everyone to know, like, Govberg is not alone in being in this position. This is a position that was forced upon them by the brands. Better or not, you ultimately have to make a decision. You can't just be like, well, we have all these loyal customers, but I'm just going to stick it in the storefront and see what happens.
Right. So the fact of the matter is we give them to our biggest customers that buy all sorts of items and not just the creme de la creme from the premier brands, because frankly, anybody would buy those watches. I mean, a 5711 steel, which once again is the Nautilus time only with the date, it has a retail price of $30,000 now after the 20% price increase.
And we're going to talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, so a 24.8 retail watch, now $30,000 after the 20% price increase that took effect on March 1st. The watch trades on the secondary market for, call it roughly $45,000. I saw one posted for sale for over $50,000. And meanwhile, you have gray market dealers that are willing to buy the watch at significantly over retail. So when I say that it's like a favor selling the watch at retail, you also want to make sure that you're selling it to somebody who's not going to flip it on you. That's another situation that you run into as an authorized retailer
and
now.
Explain why you don't want that.
So all of a sudden you have a watch that you sold at auction a couple days later, or a couple weeks later, or you have a gray market dealer showing your watch available for sale on the secondary market at a huge premium. It's something that we pay very close attention to and do not want to have happen. The brands are very particular about having the watches end up in the hands of people who are going to wear them, enjoy them, and are not going to resell them. And it's tough. I mean, you have people who represent themselves as somebody who would never resell a watch, but once they get it and the temptation's there to literally flip a watch immediately for $40,000 when you bought it for $30,000, mind you, it was $25,000 only just a couple weeks ago. I mean, where else can you buy something for $25,000 and flip it the next day for $40,000? You're talking about a 40% profit.
Let's hold on a second here. I think it's an interesting topic because you said the brands want people to wear it and enjoy it, and I don't deny that. But you can't deny that this type of behavior where someone buys a watch and flips it and tries to sell it for more. I mean, I don't know too much about the brand, but the streetwear Supreme. There's a store down the street from me, and there's this line of kids that lines up when they have a Supreme drop. Now, these aren't people buying these items to consume themselves. These are people buying these items to go online and sell them for more. I think Supreme, probably like a watch brand, is really thrilled at the idea that someone's excited enough to go take their watch and sell it for more, because that marketing says, wow, this brand has valuable stuff. So isn't there sort of an upside, even though conservatively speaking, I agree with you, they should just want people to wear it. But don't they? Isn't there like a guilty pleasure in seeing it? Then they're more than happy to allow it to continue at least enough.
I certainly don't think they mind it. Whether they're going to go on record saying they are happy about it, you know, who knows? But the fact of the matter is, I think they're well aware that there's a trickle down effect to the rest of their line when some of their watches trade for over retail. And you're more inclined to buy a more standard, less in demand Patek Philippe because certain watches are trading for over and are in such demand than you would otherwise. I truly believe that. We had an interesting, one of my coworkers told me today that a guy who has a 5711 told me he's uncomfortable wearing it because he knows how liquid it is. For, you know, he paid 24.8, he got it before the price increase, and he's uncomfortable wearing it knowing that he could sell it for such a premium over what he paid. And I found that incredibly interesting. I had never heard that before, but I kind of get it. Do you understand that psychology? Does that make sense to you?
100%. The normal Patek Philippe guy buys Patek Philippe because it communicates a certain status, but tends to be a lot less in your face about it. So if the psychology of a Patek Philippe buyer is more discreet, then having a non-discreet watch would theoretically make them uncomfortable.
Right. And it's gotten to the point now where it's so much over retail that I don't know, where does it end? And now with Patek Philippe, explaining to their retailers in a more transparent fashion, because it's gotten so crazy about how these watches are going to be heavily allocated moving forward. I think now retailers have a better understanding and are communicating to their clientele bases that these watches are incredibly finite and they're only going to get a few, if even a year. And when clients are told that, they then go to the secondary market and it just continues to go up because they're just chasing, it's sort of like once you're told you can't have something over and over and over again, it just makes you want it even more.
So let's get a little bit bigger picture here. We both agree that the industry in general, I'm not talking about specific situations like Patek Philippe producing very few 5711s, but the industry in general over the last 10 to 15 years produced too many watches. So while there are isolated instances of this type of scarcity, there's a lot of luxury watches, to go around. And that has created a lot of problems, gray market, discounting, things like that. So I have given the advice, or at least presented the suggestion, that in order to fix a lot of the quote-unquote problems that the watch industry has, they should reduce inventory. Is what you're seeing with these specific watches, would this add weight to the argument that everyone needs to produce less and some other brands might experience the same type of demand? Or do you think something else would happen if across the board production went down to create the real scarcity that I think we both agree informed consumers want?
I think we're seeing it. I think that some of the group brands are following suit, seeing how well these privately held brands are doing. They are closing dealers. I think that a lot of these brands need less points of sale, especially with the way the world is evolving. Over 50% of the watches that are sold out of the Audemars Piguet boutique are sold over the phone. It is not difficult, due to fantastic publications like A Blog to Watch, to learn about watches and to make a phone call and have the watch shipped to you. I mean, what's funny is the way things are now. We'll see if it changes with internet tax and whatnot. But it's pretty funny that you're docked anywhere from 5 to 10% by going into a store and paying sales tax now.
Yeah.
Just even price to price. So it's even like most people want to buy remotely as is. So you go on the various publications' websites, you read about the watch. Is it different trying the watch on? Yes. Is it that difficult to send the watch back, though, if you don't like the way it is on your wrist? It's not. I mean, people do it all the time. People buy stuff remotely on Amazon and whatnot. So I think that there is a significantly less need for points of sale in different locales. I think that, if anything, it just puts more pressure on those retailers to sell watches, and it leads to greater accessibility, more discounting. I think that you're going to see more and more brands contract, and similar to what AP's done, and have less points of sale and do better business with less partners.
And again, it goes back down to this discussion of actual scarcity. No matter whether or not these brands can produce more, they are benefited in the long run by having more demand, higher resale value, higher ability to sell at retail, by restricting inventory. So I think that, again, I think there's a lesson here. While it's maybe difficult for a lot of people to stomach, and a lot of brands, obviously feel scared because it means less production into wholesale, what you're talking about is an evolution of the industry's, production model that I think is necessary in this globalized world where you can't just dump products somewhere, some corner of the world, because everything gets to the same place, which is the internet. So the brands, there's no sneaky way anymore of making more watches they can sell. That's kind of the point I'm trying to make.
Right. No, I agree completely, and I think you're seeing more and more limited editions now because the brands understand that they need to make these watches finite and not create the perception that they're too accessible and that everyone has them, because it all comes back to the fact that luxury is scarcity.
Okay, so let's talk about these brands that sell over retail. There's Patek Philippe, Rolex, and Audemars Piguet. So let's first, let me ask you, are there other situations that you can think of where there's been another brand in the last 2 or 3 years where a new watch is sold, or a used watch, for example, is sold more than retail? Any examples from any other brands you can think of, or is it just those brands?
There is the Chronometre Blue from FP Journe has now gone into over retail territory. There's the Bronzo from Panerai, which trades for significantly over the retail. That's a good example. It's a $14,000 retail, and it trades for $30,000. The Snoopy from Omega was one that it was a $7,150 retail, and that watch is trading for at least $20,000 now. I love that watch.
Do you have? Because I'm on right now. I'm obviously browsing.
We have a Snoopy, and it's not posted for sale. It's one that we have some watches that we don't put up for sale, where it's sort of like we want to have them sold offline, or sold to a specific.
Yeah, when someone says, "George, you got anything special for me?"
Got anything special that's not online? Yeah, we get that all the time now. In fact, we're actually working on a VIP portion of our website, which is coming soon, where we're going to have more, scarce, prestigious watches that you don't see as often. Here's a watch that you're on right now, which is advertised at over the retail price, slightly over the retail price. This was the 60th anniversary Speedmaster.
Great watch.
And so they made the Railmaster, the Seamaster, and the Speedmaster, and they also are starting to deliver now the Trilogy set, which comes with a special box that's very cool. These, I think, trade right around retail, which is pretty good, which is great still, especially considering, how many were made. I mean, there's a good amount that were made. I mean, the Snoopy was close to 2002, which is super impressive on the fact. How a watch is another level of hot, Ariel, in my opinion? It's that they aren't even for sale at any number. Go look and try and find a Snoopy at any price, and they aren't for sale. You know why? Because everyone that has one loves it so much that they don't want to sell it.
Right.
So, but there are certainly some examples from the other brands. There are just multiples, like many from those three that we've been discussing.
Now, we know it's not scarcity alone, right? You can't just be a hot brand and make a watch with a few pieces and expect for things to go nuts. There's another added element to the formula, and what do you think that element is? It's not an easy question.
Yeah, it is. It's a difficult.
But do we agree there's something else that you can't just have a Rolex and it's uncommon and people really want it? Like, there's plenty of uncommon Rolexes that no one cares are uncommon.
I think you have to have true value, and by true value, let me think of a good example. I would go back to the Chronometre Blue. That the dial has a success rate of approximately 20%. The tantalum case is done by few other brands. So it's at the point now where their brand manager has told me that when they sell the watch at a wholesale price to authorized retailers, that they're losing on the watch. And I believe it. I don't think that that's just BS and him just, making us feel good. I believe that it is so difficult to manufacture and is such a good value, even at the low 20s price point, that people are saying, hey, look, like this is worth my money. It's not just the scarcity aspect and the marketing and the, brand image, which definitely plays into it. I think that marketing and distribution are more important than the product quality at the end of the day, is what it comes down to. The reason why it's such a difficult question to answer is because the fact of the matter is that it goes back to the Lang versus Patek. I mean, you have two brands that make arguably the same quality watch. I mean, very high quality, unbelievable attention to detail, and yet one trades, a lot of their watches are trading at a premium, and the other one, a lot of their watches are trading at 40 to 50% off the retail price. When the one that's trading at 40 to 50% off the retail price, they make 6,000 watches a year, maybe, roughly, where, Patek makes roughly 60,000. So I do believe that it comes into play about, still the value. I mean, with FP Journe, I think that his watches are arguably the best that there are in the industry. I mean, Gold Movements, who makes full 18 karat gold movements, who has five-day power reserves on most of their watches, on all their octas, the self-winding pieces. I mean, he makes true value. It's not just a supply and demand game. The watches are actually substantial and worth the money.
Right. I mean, I have a lot to say on this matter. I think the point that we've sort of discovered is that there isn't one reason that a watch can garner this type of demand. There's a few different types of reasons. And even in you trying to explain it, you probably accidentally contradicted yourself where you said it has to have true value, and they're like, oh, but the marketing is more important than the product quality. I think you're actually right in both instances, even though those things kind of contradict one another. There are sometimes instances where value comes into play, and I'll talk about that one second. Sometimes where it's marketing. I think a Rolex arguably is a combination of the two. People like the steel ones because inherently there's a more affordable price and you get as much Rolex. You just don't have a precious metal. But it is the marketing. It's totally about the marketing. But FP Journe, there's no marketing. But with FP Journe, the Chronometre Blue was not an overnight success. This watch is, 5 years old now at least. And it wasn't until more recently that watch became a hit. Now, why? Now, the brand itself doesn't produce that many watches to begin with, and that is just one of several models. And it was, it was an entry-level model. And so what I think collectors, and this is, in my opinion, the psychology, and I'd love to hear your opinion on it, FP Journe, I agree with you, is a brand that makes a good product. And compared to, like, Patek Philippe prices, I think you get more watch for your money. And not everyone wants to go in and spend like $80,000 on FP Journe because it's expensive. So they're like, what's the way into the brand? And the Chronometre Blue was, I think it was the cheapest watch you could get from the brand, but it still had all the hallmarks of the brand. And so now in today's world, especially with investments, people are trying to find things that are more stable. They are listening to the nerdy collectors like us that say, I don't care what the marketing says, I don't care what the ambassadors are, this is a lot of watch for your money. And then it takes a while for that message to reach sort of the lay consumer. And so I think the Chronometre Blue began as just a good value for the money that was very under the radar, and it was an entry level into a brand that you had to be aware of watchmaking to appreciate. You don't just get into watches and appreciate FP Journe. It just doesn't happen. Maybe you can like the design, but chances are it's not even going to be in your radar until you really understand watches. But because it had inherent value compared to a lot of other stuff, people eventually found out. Once they found out, it then becomes hot. And why it's hot is almost lost. It's just that it's hot.
Right. Yeah, people have become increasingly hooked on FP Journe. It's the brand that once people get into, they become obsessed with. And that, to me, shows how high quality the product is and how many amazing models he makes across the board. The guy made 659 mechanical watches last year and yet makes you could have 50 different Journes and they would all be different. I mean, that is unbelievably impressive to me, how much variety he offers in his line with such a small production. I can't wait to hear your response on this, Ariel. So when we talk about inherent value and compare it with marketing and what's more important, Richard Mille. It's a brand that we don't deal much in. It's one of the few brands that we're not an authorized retailer for. I mean, I think it's probably probably like the only big brand that we don't deal in. And we don't do much in the secondary market. And frankly, the reason why we don't do much in the secondary market, while it's unbelievably hot, everyone tells me how, we do well with it when we get the few pieces that we do. I think we have one posted right now, in fact. But I hear it just keeps going up and up and up. Yet when we talk about inherent value relative to the prices, come on. I mean, that's your classic example right there, where it's more about image, supply and demand, marketing, because when it comes to intrinsic value, you're not even close to what you're paying for there.
Well, look, I wrote a whole article on this. I think it was literally called "Why Are Richard Mille Watches So Expensive?" And I discussed all these elements, and I flat out state that these watches are the brand charges more than they need to for the production and administration, things like that. Like, if what you're paying for is more than just what the watch costs to make. So we're on the same page there. But for me, the main value in the brand is, one, they're distinctive, and two, it basically proves that you have a bunch of money. Because they're so expensive, there's this exclusionary value that says if you own one of these, you're a rich person. Like, hands down. Like, you can own a Rolex and have saved up and still not be a rich person. And not as many people know Patek Philippe. But with a Richard Mille, it's like walking proof that you have some type of wealth status associated with you.
I've heard it's the secret handshake amongst billionaires, I've heard.
Okay, that would be another way of putting it for sure. So I and again, psychology is a big part of this, and you know this more than anyone because you sell watches to people. The thing that makes them want it is oftentimes way above and beyond what it does and what it looks like. There's a message that is represented in the product, and sometimes you really do want to be able to fit in with your peer group. And one way of fitting with your peer group is to prove to them, I am part of your peer group. And no one ever wants to do it in a desperate looking way. So by wearing a watch, you can sort of play off like, oh, I'm not trying to show off wealth. Why would I do something like that? I really love the craftsmanship and the design, and this brand really speaks to me. Yeah, maybe that's true, but at the end of the day, it's what this watch says about where you are in life. You're trying to attract attention by some type of people. Maybe it's for business. Maybe it's for pleasure. Whatever it is, you are looking for a certain type of message, and people respond to brands that allow that message to be as strong as possible. The stronger that message, the less likely that you're faking it, the more power it has. And there's a lot of ways to fake it. In a Louis Vuitton handbag, it's not difficult to go out there and find a fake Louis Vuitton handbag that from afar looks like the right thing. So that's why it's no longer become this item that says automatically you have money, because it's easy to fake that message. And with a Richard Mille, I think a lot of the visual complexity goes down to we're really doing our best to make it very hard to fake.
Right. And I think it would be hard to fake, Richard Milles, even though you get people that aren't fans of the brand saying it looks like it's something that popped out of a vending machine. In a way, it's not. I mean, you wouldn't. I think that you would be able to spot a fake RM very quickly.
Yeah, I've seen them. They look awful. They look terrible.
Right.
Okay, so in these brands, and again, I know there's some exceptions in Panerai and FP Journe, but let's just go back to Patek Philippe, Rolex, and Audemars Piguet. And one of the these things that these brands have in common, and I guess it also makes sense with FP Journe, is these are independently run brands, meaning they don't have a lot of people that they have to make happy with short-term performance. Yes, they all want growth and blah 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 blah, but ultimately they have more of a long-term play. And I don't think that there's any accident. I think there's a direct correlation between them being able to make these decisions and them being able to have the discipline with this restricted production. But I also want to say this notion of certain watches being able to sell for over retail even when they're used does not represent all of their watches. In fact, it doesn't represent most of their watches. This is and help modify this statement. This is a small number of watches that we're talking about.
It is, although it's gotten to the point now with Patek where it's probably 10. So it's not just, it used to always just be like the stainless steel Daytona. And now with Patek, you're getting to pretty much every variation of the Nautilus. The watch that you're looking at right now, the 5167, that has now become a significantly over retail watch just over the last month or two, in fact. And the reason for this, I think, if you want an entry level stainless steel men's Patek Philippe, you could either have gotten the 5167 or the 5711. And the 5711, the Nautilus, has gone bananas to the point that there's such a spread between the two that this watch that retails for $18,900 is now trading for $25,000 because the 5711 is $30,000, but you can't get it at $30,000 even. What's happened now, Ariel, is you'll have young guys who really want to enjoy the watches and are passionate, and they're not in it for the potential flip and the upside on selling a watch. And they say to you, how am I able to start up a relationship with you as a big Patek dealer to get the hot watches? And it's a good question. It's like, you have to tell somebody that basically, and it's a fine line. It's sort of like, you can't start with just the creme de la creme because we have existing clients that want these watches that, may have spent $500,000 with us, and they want the same watch as you, and you haven't spent any money with us. And that customer has been with us for 10 years. Who do you give the watch to? I mean, it's a no-brainer. Or do you bet on the upside of the young customer and want to get his business? It's tough. These decisions are very difficult on who to give these watches to, because at the end of the day, and it's nice for us to have this, right? To have this luxury of selling a high ticket item when in a way it's a gift. I mean, it's a fact of the matter. I go back to referring to it as a gift just on the basis that these watches can be sold the next day to a dealer. They're highly liquid above their retail price. So if you can buy something for a substantial amount of money and liquidate it the next day at a lot more, I view that as a gift. So we want to give these gifts to people that appreciate them and are going to wear them, that are loyal to us, and that are not in it just for the fact that they trade for over, but that are going to buy other watches and not flip the watches on us, because the brands don't want them to be flipped. So we want to make sure, it's very difficult. We want to make sure they end up in the hands of people that are going to hold on to them, appreciate them, remain loyal to us, and buy other items.
Okay, so let's now talk about a few models. You already mentioned a few of them, and I just want to spend the last few minutes just sort of telling people some of the watches that first were a couple years ago trading for more, that you could remember, and then maybe are trading for more right now. And I think I want people to walk away with having some idea of a theme. We don't have to explain what that theme is, but I think it's important to sort of recognize what these watches are. But before we do that, where do the prices come from? When these prices go up and they're above retail, who's setting these prices? Is it just some type of ballsy retailer that just decides I want to charge $5 more, and if it sells, someone else is like, well, let me try for a few $100s more and see what happens? Or is there some strategy on determining if it sells at retail $100 more? And in the example of the Patek, twice as much. So where is that coming from?
So, very good question. I have seen the ascension of a lot of these watches over the last 6 months, and I continue to ask people and get asked, where does it end? So you had the 5711, which I remember it clear as day. We posted a 5711 white dial, which isn't quite as in demand as the blue dial, for below retail in the summer of last year. Now, I mean, the watch has.
I can't even find these on your site. It's funny. I can go to Patek's site.
Well, that's because they don't stay. I mean, like we've in the last 2 weeks we've sold 2 pre-owned 5711 blue dial pieces for $45,000. They just don't stay. They get swarmed. So I remember we posted one for sale at 37.5 at the end of last year and like the fall of last year, and people went viral and said Govberg's is posting this for 37.5. They're crazy. We would now buy the watch in the mid 30s. So we would pay over the new retail price for the watch. It's now trading in the mid 40s. So how does that happen? I think it's just that once it's seen as acceptable, and by seen as acceptable, you'll have a reputable gray market dealer post it for sale, and people say, he has it up for sale at that price, and then it's marked as sold. Or you have an auction result that is crazy, which the auction results on Nautiluses of late have been nuts, and people are willing to buy it at those numbers, and they can't get them at retail, and it just settles in, and you see results and what things are posted for. But it is a good question on how it happens. I think that it's arbitrary, and it's just what people believe. It's perception, it's perceived value, Ariel, and it's really what somebody is okay paying to get the watch when, frankly, they can't get it through primary means. So where does the market settle? Where if there are multiples for sale at a certain price and they're not selling, I think it'll naturally come down. But that hasn't been the case. Anytime one's been posted for over retail, like you said, you can't find them on our website. We've sold 2 in the last 2 weeks. So one was from 2010 and the other from 2016. And they went for a third over. They went for, 1.5 times. They went for 45 when the new retail is 30. I mean, it's nuts.
Can you explain to me why it is that Patek Philippe just raised their prices by 20%? Is that across the board?
No, It was actually just on 2 models, the 5711 that you're looking at, and then the 5712, which is the Nautilus Moon Phase. So
just 2. Okay, I did not realize that.
Just 2 models. So now you have, which is interesting, the 5712 steel, which you're on right now, retails for 40, whereas the rose gold version, which is right next to it, is 43.5. So if you look, you're at 39,870, 40, and if you go to the rose gold, you'll see it's 43.5. So,
yeah, but you don't get that nice bracelet.
True, exactly. But you're getting
the whole point's the bracelet. I'm going to tell everyone out there, don't buy a Nautilus that's not on the bracelet. Proceed.
So when you asked which watches are the ones that are starting to go over retail, my answer is stainless steel sports models. It's what everyone's chasing now. I think they're wearable in all different settings. They're very versatile. You can wear them on the beach. You don't have to be overly concerned with banging them. And by the same token, you could wear that to a black tie event. So those are the watches that are going up. I mean, with Audemars, it's the Jumbo, which is another watch, Ariel, similar to the Chronometra Blue. That watch was soft. It was a dog 5 years ago. And now it's trading for significantly over the retail price.
Are you talking about the 39 or the 41?
39 millimeter Jumbo.
39. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and again, I think there's and look, we talk about bubbles all the time, economic bubbles, demand bubbles, and things like that. I think there's a lot here, but I also think that part of the point of this conversation is to talk about the profile of why some of these watches go into it. Okay, so so we've mentioned some of these watches already. Okay, so the 5711, the 5712 are both watches, as well as the Aquanaut. I guess there's 3. And these are watches, not every single model, but a lot of the models you've been able to, if you want to, sell in a pre-owned over retail. Let's talk about Rolex. What Rolex models are experiencing this as well? And I know that the GMT Master 2 with the black and blue bezel, the steel one, if I understand, that is now a model that is becoming even hotter than it was before.
Yes. So the 3 big ones I would say are the Blue Dial Skydweller stainless steel with the white gold bezel.
Oh.
That's a watch that trades for way over retail. And And when we come back to value, like I think that's arguably the best value in the industry. I would go as far as saying. I mean, you have a unbreakable annual calendar GMT, and by unbreakable, I say that when Rolex, conducted a training with us, they said it's all activated. There's no pushers. Everything is activated through the bezel and the crown. So when the bezel is rotated over, a few degrees and to a different position, when the crown is then pulled out, it activates a different complication to set the.
I'm currently actually reviewing this watch right now, and I love it. What's the retail on this watch?
14.4.
There we go, 14.4. There, I see it.
And it's a watch that Godberg Jewelers would buy for thousands over the retail price. Just give us the opportunity.
Thousands of, because I saw not that version, but I saw a different two-tone one with a white dial, the two-tone yellow, gold, and steel that you were selling close to 19, which I know is a few thousand more than retail.
Yeah, so it's 17,150 on the is the retail for the two-tone version. What's ironic is the blue dial and stainless is trading for more than the two-tone version. So it goes back to, people are loving stainless steel sports models now.
Is gold getting a bad rap? I know gold has been overpriced for a very long time, but do you think that gold is being treated unfairly?
I don't know, because there are certain Nautiluses in rose gold that have started to skyrocket as well. So, but I do believe that there's a significantly more demand for stainless steel watches and models in stainless over the gold variations. Even when the price spread, starts to get smaller, like we just looked at with Patek. With Rolex right now, there are so many rumors. One is that they're going to have a price increase. This is something that they have spoken about publicly. I mean, they've said it to us. They could have a U.S. price increase and the market wouldn't even flinch. The problem is they're so global that if there was any sort of arbitrage anywhere in the global network of Rolex, and by that I mean watches are priced in Venezuela cheaper than they are given the exchange rate to Hong Kong, the watches will flow. There will be gray market activity wherever they're cheaper, they'll go to where they are selling for the most. So they need to pay attention to currencies, currency fluctuations. Rolex, I don't think will ever have a price decrease. I would have said the same thing about Patek Philippe, which they, believe it or not, did. I'll never forget that. I think it was 2015. They had a 7% price decrease. And it was because, the dollar, prices were so much more expensive in the U.S. than they were in other parts of the world. But there's speculation that they're going to have a price increase. If so, when does it happen and how much? And I've also heard the rumor of late that where you said these brands, they make small adjustments to their watches but keep the same iconic look. People are saying that they're upgrading the movements, going to give them longer power reserves, maybe make slight variations to the dial, whatever it may be. Maybe it's a combination of the two, a price increase and new variations of the models. It's another example of maybe these watches aren't going to be around for forever. So I want to grab it while I can because the basic Submariner is going to be different after Basel. Like they're going to come out with a new watch and discontinue just the basic Sub. I mean, we'll see. I mean, it's there's speculation that the green Submariner, the green ceramic Sub, is going to be discontinued. That watch is going insane. That's a $9,050 retail and trading for 11. I saw one posted for sale for 15 the other day. I mean,
wow.
Who knows where that watch goes. So the green Sub, the stainless steel and ceramic Daytona, and the Sky Dweller, particularly the blue dial, those are the ones that have gone bananas.
And what about an Audemars Piguet, other than the Jumbo?
The big winner in AP, there's the Jumbo that we mentioned briefly. The big one is the stainless steel double balance. So that's a watch. Here's an interesting little insider info for you. This is a good story for you. Give you an idea on what's going on and how these watches are obtained. So I have a very good customer of mine who really wants a double balance. The watch is now boutique only. And it's so hot that it's not just like you can go to the boutique and just pay retail and get it. You need to be a good boutique customer to get the watch. So it's like another level of exclusivity. So He has now purchased 3 watches from the boutique, and he's traded all 3 of them to me because he's working towards becoming a good enough client to get the watch. In a way, he's paying over retail for the watch. I mean, the watches that he's purchased, he's enjoyed for a while. He hasn't bought them just to flip them, but he did know that he probably wasn't going to keep them long term, and that he wouldn't take too much of a haircut on them, and that he could then become more of a good customer at the boutique so that he could ultimately get the double bounce. He still hasn't gotten it, by the way. He's purchased 3 watches from the boutique at full clip and still hasn't gotten the watch. And this watch retails, I want to say mid to low 40s, and is trading at 70.
So is it a game for guys like this? Like, is it just entertainment?
I think it is partially. I mean, it's the allure, it's the chase. I mean, I have people tell me a lot of times it's a chase. And then what happens is after you get it, you flip it, and then it ends up on the secondary market, and you have another, watch out there being advertised at crazy over list. It's an interesting game, like you said. And then you have guys saying, I'd never heard that before, how they're uncomfortable wearing the watch because of how liquid it is and how much it's worth. It's sort of like you're devaluing your investment. You nick it up, you bang it up when you could, flip it, quickly right now while you have a bird in the hand at a significant profit over what you paid.
I think what's important to note is the people that tend to get these rare watches that go for a lot are not the people who are acquiring them and making money on them. It's not that they're not making money, but the long-term game they're playing, they're spending more in than they're getting. It's kind of like, the
Yes.
house always wins. And so
And we, not to cut you off, but we have now gotten to the points, we're not always right, but we're able to decipher which customers are the ones that are in it for the long haul and truly love it and love all watches or love a specific brand in particular, and are in it for the love of the game and the passion because they're watch addicts and not because of the secondary market value.
And if you are just looking at watches and you're saying to yourself, man, there's these things going at over retail, I'm going to somehow get into this and I'm going to buy these watches, I'll make money, you're kind of doomed from beginning, because what you're going to have to do and the amount of money you're going to put into it, unless you're very, very lucky, you're going to end up losing, because you're never going to have access to enough of these watches
Right.
in order to make real money. It's just going to be so much effort. So I like to say that because I don't want my hobby to become kind of a cold investment vehicle for people who are trying to make money. It devalues everything. It creates bubbles, and it makes people that really like watches just not have as good of a time.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. And I think it's now disappointing that you have some people who, genuinely just want to wear the watch and can't get a 5711. I mean, if you're, it's similar to like the 5522 that came out as part of the Grand Exhibition. It was meant to be for like a younger clientele base and get people into the brand, Patek Philippe.
Which one is that?
So it was the stainless steel pilot's watch, 42 millimeters.
The one with the 3-hand one?
Correct.
Yeah.
And it was meant to be the watch that got people into the brand. And what ended up happening, it was so hot, and another watch that retailed for $21,500 and trades for at least 2x retail. And that's another one that it just ended up going to existing customers that wanted it because it was a collectible item. They had never done, a stainless steel pilot's watch before, and, who knows if they'll ever do it again. And so while Patek wanted it to be for a younger clientele base, it didn't really end up being that way because of how in demand it was in the secondary market value.
When they say stuff like that, they don't believe it. Really, just because they come out with a stainless steel pilot watch, it's more expensive than every other stainless steel pocket watch, pilot watch, it's somehow going to attract younger people? No, that's not how it's going to work. It's just going to make their existing clients feel like they can buy a younger person's watch.
I mean, that's what happened. I mean, that's the fact of the matter. They ended up, I mean, all the ones that we sold went to very, very good existing clients. I mean,
I'm sure none of them were 22-year-olds.
Right. I mean, the fact of the matter is like if you have big customers that want those watches because the demand was so strong, hence the reason why they're trading for such crazy numbers, because the demand far exceeded the supply. I mean, what are you going to do? Tell 6-figure customers no when they want the watch? I mean, and give it to somebody who, is in a position in their life where that could be the only big watch that they're purchasing for a long time. Because let's face it, 21.5 is a lot of money. So,
Yes.
a guy who just got out of grad school, who, started working in finance in New York and has the means to now buy his first nice luxury watch. If you're a dealer, you just wouldn't be wise to sell it to that person. And over, if you have an existing clientele base that is, spending lots of money. I mean, yes, like you want to get new blood. It's important to cater to the younger generation. And, there is something to be said for, putting confidence in somebody that they're going to be loyal and spend money with you moving forward and growing up. Yes. But that's not the way it was for the bigger retailers. It's just the fact of the matter is that there were so many existing customers that were spending money more regularly and have the means to buy more high ticket items. They're the ones that got the watches, in large part.
Right. Well, listen, George, this was a fantastic discussion. We're over an hour now, and there's only so much watch talk people can take. We'll have to do another one of these. I think that
Absolutely.
we really sort of discussed the area of that I wanted to talk about. I think there's a lot of good information that came out of this. Everyone, if you want to be in touch with George, you just have to call up Gobberger Watchbox and want to buy something. And George Mayer may be the guy you get to talk to. George, thank you so much for your insight and your time. And
Errol, I appreciate you having me. It was a great time. And I'd be happy to do it again at some point soon.
We'll have to do that. Everyone, thanks for listening to Spending Time. Talk to you later.